Hello and welcome in, you guys. We got One Piece chapter 1117 here in front of us, and that is what we're going to go over. So with that being said, my name is Sai, and let's just hop into it. So the first thing we have this week is volume 7 of Yamato's cover page story. We are at least 7 weeks in to this story, and let me tell you guys, Yamato still hasn't left the starting line. So this time around, we see Yamato saying their goodbyes to Nekomamushi and Hyogoro. It's really nice, it's wholesome, but it does make me wonder if we will spend next week and the week after and the week after that saying our goodbyes to other prominent scabbards like Denjiro, Kawamatsu, maybe we visit Shinobu, maybe Momonosuke, right? You know what I mean? Like, it makes me wonder when Yamato is actually going to start their pilgrimage, because it hasn't happened yet, you know? And here's the thing. It's normal for these cover page stories to take a long time to get ramped up, right? Because the Germa one is a prime example. That was the last one we had. It took about 20 volumes before we got to Blackbeard, before we got to Neo Mads, and etc. So I'm expecting this to be a long and slow burn. But I will admit, I thought Yamato would at least have left the Flower Capital come this week, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. And I feel like come next week, we're still going to be in the Flower Capital, because like I said, there are so many characters that Yamato still hasn't said goodbye to. Like Inuarashi is a prime example. We have Nekomamushi in this chapter, but where's Inuarashi? You know what I mean? But yeah, either way, it's nice. You know, Yamato's hugging them, apparently getting some Yakuza moral code of advice, and everything's looking dandy on their end. So now, on to the first page of the chapter, and we got something massive. Guys, we have not seen Don Krieg, Ghin, or Pearl for the past 25 years. It's been that long. They appeared in around chapter 50, and here we are. You know, this is chapter 1117, and they have finally made their reappearance. So yes, in the very first panel of this chapter, off to the right, you see Ghin, you see Don Krieg, and then off to the left, you see the more notable Pearl, just kind of taking up a lot of room there, just kind of banging his chest like a madman. And I'm excited. I am so excited, because here's the thing. Unlike the other side villains we have met through Reaction Piece in the last couple of chapters, Don Krieg, Ghin, and Pearl are at an actual noteworthy island. They are chilling at Hachinosu, Blackbeard's home base. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are going to come back into play, and I am super excited to see what they're going to do in the future. Will they be rivals still? Will they assist the Straw Hats? Will they fight Blackbeard? Are they working for Blackbeard? We have no clue. But one thing's for certain though, and that's the fact that they have made their comeback. Gin's promise to Sanji is going to come true. And if you guys forgot what his promise was, he promised Luffy and Sanji that they would meet again in the Grand Line. And here they are, man. They made it. They made it. Ghin survived the poison. Don Krieg, well, we knew he would survive, but he made it past the red line, you know. And then there's Pearl. Pearl is still here chilling with them. Oh, man, it feels good. It's kind of like when Crocodile and Mr. One got reintroduced alongside Bon Clay. You know what I mean? Like, that is what this feels like. Of course, I don't think they're at that level, but who knows, man? They made it. You know, they've been traveling for the past 2 years. They did not let Luffy be a stopgap on their adventure. They didn't let Luffy stop them, and they didn't let Mihawk stop them. You guys remember that? Mihawk was chasing down Don Krieg. That is how he was introduced. He was like, yeah, you know, we made it to the Grand Line, but there was this psychopath that just destroyed all of our ships with a single blow. Mihawk went after this guy, you know, like, oh man, his potential is crazy. I mean, his aura in this chapter is crazy. I mean, him and Ghin sporting the black glasses, just no dialogue, just like this. Oh my goodness. And Don Krieg still has the, I think it's still the wood steel armor. Of course, we don't know that for sure until we get the actual colorings or anime version of this chapter. You know, for all we know, Ghin, Pearl, and Don Krieg could have upgraded suits, you know, like we have no clue. We're just looking at the black and white images, but who knows, man, who knows? But one thing I do want to point out, though, is that Don Krieg is still sporting his Jolly Roger, which to me is quite notable because that means that he has never bent the knee once in that journey. You know, he never gave up and joined some other pirate captain. Nah, dude, he is still his own captain, and I love to see it. I mean, you know, granted, he could be working for Blackbeard since he's on the island, but Blackbeard does welcome a lot of other pirates to his island, so it could go either way in that regard. But I think Don Krieg is very stubborn. He's too prideful to actually follow a different person. I mean, hell, if there was a character that were to come back into the story that would have Conqueror's Haki, Don Krieg would be on my list. I'm not even joking. Luffy beat Don Krieg down, and even while Don Krieg was unconscious, the man stood back up. He T-posed, and he said, "Bring me Luffy." Oh my goodness, that was crazy. So yeah, if there was a character, just some weird side villain that doesn't mean too much, that ends up getting Conqueror's Haki, I would put my money on Don Krieg. He would be one of those candidates for me. Besides that, there's not too many other candidates out there, but yeah, Don Krieg is up there for me, man. I was so excited to see him here, and it kind of goes back to what I said last chapter, where I was like, hey, if Reaction Piece continues, we are going to get more and more obscure characters. Don Krieg was on the list, and boom, he is now marked off. And if anything, you know, I'm going to spoil the ending of the chapter, but now that the broadcast has been cut off, I'm a little bit sad. Because if Reaction Piece went on for one more chapter, who else could we have seen? Like, for example, we could have seen Captain Kuro, we could have seen Arlong, some Bon Clay. Like, there's just so many people, man. Yeah, Reaction Piece is great. I love it just for moments like this. Oh yeah, real quick, but one more thing I want to talk about with Don Krieg, and actually, it's more so a question for you guys, but how strong do you think Don Krieg is right now? Which, obviously, it doesn't really matter too much because he's not fighting anybody, but I'm curious, right? Like, it's been 2 years, he's chilling in the New World, he's in Blackbeard's territory, he has the drip, he has the aura. How strong do you think he is now? Because, let's be real, a lot of characters that we met pre-time skip have gotten buffed significantly in this final saga. The Giants are a prime example. We have Rob Lucci as another example. And, you know, Crocodile, if you were to come back in with a 1.6 billion berry bounty, I'm assuming he has Haki now. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if Don Krieg is going to be a decent fighter next time we see him. All right, so that's enough about Don Krieg for now. Time to talk about what is going on in the first page of the chapter, because we have a lot of dialogue just kind of being spewed out by pirates on Hachinosu. And they're talking about how they want to go after the treasure that is underwater. Because for the last few weeks now, Vegapunk has been talking about how the water levels have risen and how so many cities are just buried underneath it. And now, you know, you have people, rightfully so, wanting to go treasure hunting, wanting to go discover what is underneath the waves. And they do bring up some interesting things here. They're like, wait, how are we going to go down there? And that is when one random no-name pirate says, hey, there are ships that can go underwater. And it's like, yeah, I mean, Lost Submarine is a prime example. You could also coat your ship in bubbles. We have the Saruyama Alliance, which we'll talk about here in a second. And hey, there's even the paddle ship that the Baratier had, because that could also go underwater. Which is why I think it's quite notable that Oda brought Ghin, Don Krieg, and Pearl in on this panel. Maybe, you know, ever since they lost their ships to Mihawk and lost their ships to Luffy and the Baratier, maybe they decided to build an underwater ship. I don't think that'd be too crazy, right? I mean, Don Krieg wanted the Baratier for himself. After he lost, maybe he made himself his own Baratier 2.0. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting that they brought it up here. The next thing we see is them talking about mermaids. Like, hey, you know, if you don't have an underwater ship, you could just befriend a mermaid because mermaids can travel underwater. And then we get this non-distinct mermaid in the second panel, along with a sea beast that I believe we saw back on Fishman Island. It could be the same sea beast I'm showing you guys right here, or it could just be another giant lionfish. I'm not exactly sure, but hey, you know, befriending a mermaid is a pretty solid way to find underwater treasure, and it does make me fearful for what's going to happen at Fishman Island, because these are the pirates of Hachinosu talking about mermaids. You know who else is currently possibly after a mermaid? Blackbeard. If Caribou shows up to Blackbeard and tells him about Poseidon, who just so happens to be a mermaid, I could see Blackbeard going over there, kidnapping mermaids, kidnapping Shirahoshi, and that could potentially become a big plot point and catastrophe. So the next thing we see in lieu with underwater treasure hunting is the Saruyama Alliance with Shoujo, Mashura, and Mont Blanc Cricket. And these guys are pretty cool because they actually have scuba gear. So they could just sail anywhere they want, you know, drop anchor, and then just jump in the water. I think these guys have the highest potential when it comes to finding underwater treasure. I mean, hell, Cricket had a lot of treasure when we met him back in Jaya. I mean, he had a giant pile of gold that he found just off the coast of his island. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are the biggest earners of the group. But what's interesting isn't their underwater capabilities, but more so the dialogue and the imagery we get in their panel. Because Mashida or Shoujo, I'm not too sure which monkey is which, but they say, hey, you know, there's romance to be found. And, you know, romance is a really key word in One Piece, because not only is that the word Frankie used to describe the Void Century, it's also a key word in the first chapter of One Piece, since it's titled Romance Dawn. And here's the thing. Romance is being used synonymously with adventure and treasure hunting, and then there's Dawn, which, you know, we're all wondering what the Willy D stands for. A lot of people believe it stands for Dawn. You know, we've had a lot of people talking about Luffy bringing the Dawn to Wano, Luffy bringing the Dawn to the world. So it's like, yeah, like Romance Dawn. Oda's cooking right here, right? He's cooking. And the best part about this panel too is that if you look behind Mashira and Shoujo, there's this fully blackened silhouette, and it's some guy jumping up and dancing. It looks like a pseudo Sun God Nika dance. And it's like, okay, Oda knows what he's doing with this, right? Yeah, he knows what he's doing here. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about Romance Dawn. How do you think it's going to be significant to the Void Century, to Joy Boy, and all that good stuff? And just to drill in how important romance is, and Romance Dawn is, Oda had to write 3 versions of One Piece before it actually got serialized, because it kept on getting shot down, or Oda wanted to keep on revising it. But every single time he started One Piece, he has always named the first chapter Romance Dawn. Romance Dawn Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. You know, like, hey, it's important, guys. It is important. Oda said there's no romance in One Piece, but he's lying. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but it feels like Cricket's head got bigger. I don't know. I'm looking at his chestnut, and it's like, damn, dude, it's actually protruding out of the panel into the water panel. So it's like, maybe, you know, it's a quirky nod saying, oh, you know, Cricket can go underwater, you know what I mean? Or it's just that he has a big head. Either one. So after we see the Saruyama Alliance, we cut over to a brand new location, the Marine Hospital GS. And we see all of Sword here. We got Hibari, Kujaku, Prince Garus, Kobe, Helmeppo, and even the Sword Commander, X Drake. Yeah, so it's confirmed in this chapter that Drake is indeed the leader of Sword, which is a theory that's been going around for a while now, because, you know, back when we first saw Prince Garus and Kujaku, they talked about how they should wait for Drake before they make a move against Blackbeard. And it was like, okay, you know, maybe Drake is just another high-ranking member of Sword. And then we had Wano, where Kobe was talking to Drake and, you know, bragging about Luffy, and it seemed like Drake had a high authority there as well. But little did we know that X Drake was actually the captain of Sword. Alright, so here are my thoughts on this. First up, there's still a chance that there is another leader, maybe a supreme captain, a supreme leader perhaps. But right now, it does feel like he is the head honcho. And for me, at least, I'm a little bit disappointed. I don't say that often. You know, go back through all the videos. I rarely say I'm disappointed in anything. But X Drake, for me, has been such a letdown time and time again. I thought he was so cool back in Subodi 15 years ago. But brother, it's 2024, you know? Like, Drake did not perform well on Onigashima. He's never performed well whenever he's shown up on screen. And for a good minute, a lot of people thought he was dead. You know, like after Onigashima, the guy fell to the ground and we didn't know if he was alive or dead. But of course, you know, he's a supernova. He is a prominent character, so I always knew he would be around. But when we got revealed to the fact that he's the captain of Sword, it's like, dang, dude, I kind of feel like Kobe's stronger than him. You know what I mean? Like, am I crazy for thinking that? Like, I mean, sure, maybe Kobe's not there yet, but dude, give Kobe like a year. I don't know. Maybe I'm just severely underestimating Drake. And if I sound crazy here, let me know down below. Like, how do you guys feel about Drake potentially being the actual captain and leader of Sword, right? Like, are you okay with this? Do you think it makes a lot of sense? Do you think his strength warrants it? Or do you think, no, like maybe, you know, it's one of those situations where you don't have to be the strongest guy to be the leader. You just have to be the guy that makes the changes. You have to be the guy that makes the strategies. Maybe that's what Drake is. Maybe that's what Drake is. But yeah, we got some good old conversation between the Sword members, and they're all talking about the fallout of Vegapunk's message. And I believe it's Helmeppo, but Helmeppo says, hey, is the One Piece underwater too? You know, he's kind of bringing that up. So it does make me wonder if that's maybe a subversion from Oda, or actual confirmation that the One Piece is underwater. So after the underwater treasure talk, Sword says that it's about time that they make their move. It's their turn now. And I'm just wondering what they're gonna do. You know, so when you think about Sword, they are the one group in the Marines that can actually make moves against Yonko, right? They don't need permission from Akainu, they don't need permission from the Gorosei or anybody. They can just do whatever they want. So with that in mind, I could see them going back to Hachinosu and fighting Blackbeard again for Garp, right? Garp is their homeboy, he's their mentor, they respect Garp. I could see them wanting to save Garp, but that's awkward for me because they just lost to Blackbeard's group, and by the time they go back to Hachinosu, Blackbeard might be there. They might have more Titanic commanders there. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like that would be a smart decision, even if they have Drake on their side now. You know what I mean? Like, Drake isn't gonna add much. I'm sorry, guys. Drake isn't gonna add much, even if he is with them on Hachinosu. So now, because of that, I'm looking at other routes outside of Blackbeard, and I'm like, okay, maybe they could go after Cross Guild. Maybe, you know, since Sword is comprised of pretty good characters, I could see them rescuing civilians. I could see them potentially going to the nations that are revolting and save them if there is a Leloucia type event that's going to go down. Right, because Vegapunk did allude to that. He said, hey, Leloucia happened because the world government used Uranus on it. He didn't say Uranus outright, but we know it's Uranus. So maybe the Sword members are like, okay, you know, if Leloucia got blown up, let's go save the other kingdoms. Let's evacuate them. So maybe that's what they end up doing. Or a crazy theory that I'm kind of leaning towards, but this is all headcanon right now, but I could see them going to Shanks. Kobe and Shanks have a little bit of a connection, right? They met at Marineford. Shanks respects Kobe. Maybe Kobe goes to Shanks and says, hey, we know that you don't like Blackbeard. We, the Marines, don't like Blackbeard too because they have Monkey D. Garp held hostage. Let's work together. Maybe that could be a thing. I think a Shanks and Kobe team up against Blackbeard would be fire. Hey, any team up between two opposing factions, in my opinion, is fire. So who knows? Maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe they even go to the Straw Hats because Kobe does have the Luffy connection. So that could be another route, right? Kobe goes to Luffy on Elbaf or Egghead and he's like, hey, Luffy, your grandpa's captured. I need your help, brother. And then Luffy, having Kobe as his best friend and having Garp as his father figure, would be like, hell yeah, let's go kick Blackbeard's butt. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Sword does. Honestly, I think they're a really fun group. I love Kobe. I love Hibari. Helmeppo even. I think these guys are goofy. I think they're a lot of fun, and I think they have a lot of potential as well. As far as Drake goes, I see no potential for him, and the guy doesn't even want to be a part of anything. Kujaku says Drake is in his room and he wants to be left alone. And that's when we see Drake. He hits us with the ... He no longer has that dumb headgear anymore, and he's just staring out a window. And ironically, it's raining outside, right? Almost as if it were to accompany Vegapunk's message of the rising waters. One thing I do find odd about Drake, and this is not me slandering him anymore, because I feel like I've done enough of that, but Drake is injured heavily. And the reason I find that odd is because a lot of time has passed since Onigashima. Why is he injured? Did he fight somebody between Onigashima and now? Maybe? But because when you think about the other characters we've seen, Law, Kid, Luffy, the Straw Hats, all of the Scabbards, like everybody from the raid is completely healed. Luffy doesn't have any bandages. Zoro doesn't have any bandages. Zoro broke every bone in his body. He doesn't have any bandages. You know, Law and Kid, they tanked like a bajillion attacks from Big Mom with Haki. And they're healed, you know, like by the time Law fought Blackbeard, there's no bandages. By the time Kid got beat by Shanks, no bandages. What's happening with Drake? And Drake's a Zoan. Drake's an ancient Zoan. Why is he so beat up? I think he fought somebody else. I think that's why Drake is in a bad mood. I think he ran into somebody he didn't want to run into, and he caught another massive L. That has to be it. Outside of that, though, the one last thing I want to mention about Drake is that there's a chair in this room that is slightly ajar facing him. So it makes it seem like somebody just visited him as well. Maybe it was Kujanku who visited him, and that's when he told her to leave him alone. Or maybe it was another prominent Marine figure. Not too sure, but I would love to hear what you guys think about Drake. Do you think it's odd that he, out of everyone, is still injured? Or no, do you think he just ran into another opponent and lost? And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. So the next thing we get is an update on another old friend. Because here, on the third page of this chapter, we got Vice Admiral Smoker on his billow bike traveling around the seas in the New World. And it's awesome, dude. I mean, if we didn't know that Smoker was a Vice Admiral, if this was our first time seeing him, I'd be like, damn, this is an admiral, because all the admirals have a traveling device like this. I mean, Fujitora he flies on a rock. Green Bull, he flies with his leaf. Kuzan's over here on his bicycle. Like all these admirals have interesting transportation devices, for lack of a better word. And Smoker has one right here with his billow bike. And it is pretty damn cool. I would love to see what Smoker has been up to in the past 5 years. It's been 5 years for us, but for Smoker, it's maybe been like 2 or 3 months. But yeah, I'm curious to see what Smoker's up to. Based on the dialogue in this chapter, it looks like he's on his way to meet Tashigi at the hospital, and I'm curious to see what he's gonna do now. So it seems like he's just going to meet up with Tashigi, and Tashigi and Sword, in my opinion, are most likely going to part ways. Because we do have to remember that Tashigi is not a part of Sword. When she showed up on Hachinosu, she is the one character that did not get the Sword dialogue box. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sword goes that way and Smoker and Tashigi do their own thing. And then it does, of course, beg the question of what are they going to do? Are they going to go fight Cross Guild? Are they going to go fight the Straw Hats? Who knows? There's so many options with the Marines. And then we also have to think about how they're being deployed. Because while they can just do whatever they want, if a Kainu comes down and says, hey, I need you to do this, they're kind of getting their arm twisted. So yeah, I love that Smoker was here. I think that's another great callback, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do next. And I would love to hear what you guys think Smoker's up to. So now, back to Egghead Island. And we start off with Nami, and she mentions how the cloud has stopped moving. It has extended far enough to where the Thousand Sunny can simply coup burst or use some cola and get down to the sea once again. But before they do that, they have to wait for Zoro and Jimbei. But that is when they say, hey, we might have to take a rain check on that because we're currently chasing a giant monster. They're like, hey, what are you guys doing? Why'd you take a detour? And they're like, we're not. The giant monster is heading to the Thousand Sunny. And that is when we see Venus jump up and he's about to slice the Sunny in half. Oh, you got Lilith, Usopp, and Chopper. Their eyes are popping out of their skulls, which is kind of crazy. Usually whenever the eyes pop out, Luffy is nearby, but Luffy's not here. It's just Venus. But before Venus can cut the ship in half, Jimbei uses a Fishman Karate shoulder throw. Or I think it has a different name here. But either way, Jimbei throws Zoro over to Venus Nasujuro, and Zoro blocks the attack with Rashomon. And it's an upgraded version of that as well. And let me double check. But yeah, you see the black lightning coming out. You see some flames coming out as well. It is a epic clash. I also love what Venus does here, because when Zoro sneaks up on him, Venus is just he sees Zoro, this guy's fast. Yeah, this is a great matchup. And as they're clashing, you see the fires kind of melding together, and then they both look at each other and they're like, wait, Kitetsu, whoa, Kitetsu, is that you? And then they both get blown back, and that is when Jimbei catches Zoro, and Zoro says, hey guys, get the heck out of here. Me and Jimbei will jump aboard the ship at a later date. Oh man. Yeah, we're about to get Zoro and Jimbei versus Venus, and I think this is going to be an epic, epic matchup. I love team-up fights in any anime, and in One Piece, they're so rare and far between that I'm super excited for this. Even though I know that we're not going to defeat Venus here, there's no way we take down Venus right here and now. But I'm still looking forward to the clashes, man. I'm looking forward to the teamwork and coordination of Jimbei and Zoro. One thing to keep in mind about this matchup, though, is that Zoro is not at 100% right now, because he just got done fighting Rob Lucci. Whether it's high diff, mid diff, or easy, like whatever you think about that fight, the fact of the matter is that Zoro is still not fully recuperated. And even before that, I mean, all the Straw Hats, they were fighting the Seraphim, they were running around Egghead Island trying to stop York. The crew as a whole right now isn't exactly in pristine condition. So that's another reason why I don't think we're gonna win this fight. And plus, I mean, if Zoro and Jimbei attack Venus, he's just gonna heal. And I think that is important as well, because Zoro and Jimbei are the only characters that have not witnessed the regeneration of the Gorosei yet. Nami, Usopp, Chopper, Brook, Frankie, like everybody else has already fought a Gorosei member and has seen what they're capable of. Zoro and Jimbei haven't. So I do think this is going to be important for them. And I bet after we leave this island, we're going to get like a page where the Straw Hats all sit in a circle and they're like, hey, isn't it weird that these guys just regenerate? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we're going to get that. So having these characters partake in this fight, I think is really important, even if we don't beat him right here and now. And of course, we are stalling him and saving the Thousand Sunny, so at the end of the day, this is an important matchup. So now that we have Zoro versus Venus, though, I think there are some key things that could come out of this, considering the fact that they both have Kitetsu blades. We know that swords have more or less a will of their own. We've seen that with Enma. Enma is a prime example. Zoro grabbed it, boom, his haki's being drained out. Now that Kitetsu the third is being reunited with Kitetsu the first, I wonder if there's going to be some weird aura between the blades. Maybe they don't want to hit each other. Maybe they're going to get stronger by being close to each other. I don't know. You know, like Oda could take this so many different ways, and maybe we get a hint as to how Zoro and I guess any swordsman in the series can craft a black blade, because we still don't know. In the last Road to Laugh Tale, when Oda was going over the named blades of the series, he said, oh, black blades? Huh. If Haki can't do it, I wonder how blades become black. You know what I mean? So I think it is key that we have this matchup right here, and that it is Kitetsu versus Kitetsu. Speaking of swords, though, I really hope Zoro whips out the Wado Ichimonji, Kuina's blade, because a lot of people, you know, like, hey, myself included, I think Nasujuro has some deep ties with Wano, or maybe even the Shimotsuki, because of his name, Nasujuro, right? That is the same name, or the same end of a name that Zoro got back in Wano, because they called him Zorojuro. So I think Nasujuro, just like how we recognize Kitetsu in this chapter, will recognize the Wado Ichimonji as well, since that is a Shimotsuki blade. It was passed down the Shimotsuki bloodline, so it's like, yo, Zoro, whip out that blade, you know, I want some lore here, man. But yeah, this is cool. I'm glad this is happening here, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think about Zoro and Jimbei versus Nasujuro? Do you think they can win? Do you think they'll not come back and be able to escape safely? Or no, do you think they're going to get cooked here? Because I have seen some comments where people are saying that Zoro is going to get cooked, and I don't know, man. If it's Zoro by himself, and, you know, obviously it's after his Rob Lucci battle, sure, maybe. But Jimbei's here too, you know. Jimbei, you know, he got years and years of experience. I feel like if there's a fight that Jimbei can't win, he's probably just going to leave. And not to mention, Jimbei, he survived many encounters with high-tier opponents. Like, Jimbei is that guy. So yeah, maybe it's just me, but I do feel pretty good about this matchup here. As far as how Jimbei and Zoro are going to get down to the ground, since they're not leaving with the Thousand Sunny, I feel like Jimbei could simply take Zoro and just jump into the water. Of course, it's jumping from a sky island into water, and regular people would die, but Jimbei's Jimbei. Like I said, you know, he's the fishman. You know, he's a really strong character. So if there was a character to survive a drop from a sky island into the ocean, Jimbei's your boy. One last thing I want to bring up about this matchup before we move on, though, is I really love what Oda did here with Zoro using Rashomon as the attack that stopped Venus's blade. Because Rashomon is, you know, outside of the attack in the gates of Rashomon that you probably think of when you think of Naruto, it's actually an effect as well. It's a contradictory effect, and it's like, it's hard to explain, but it makes a lot of sense that he chose Rashomon now that we have Kitetsu versus Kitetsu. I feel like that fits very well. Hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. If not, I'll put some images up here and you guys can kind of see too. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about for Venus. Now, going down to the giant ship. We see Bonnie, Sanji, Atlas, and they are waiting for Luffy to make his appearance here. You know, all they're waiting for is Luffy and Nami in the group, and then they can get out of here. The Egghead departure is on the horizon. There's not too many things we have left to do. We just all have to meet here and get out. But there are a couple of characters trying to stop us, though. We have Vice Admiral Hound over here barking orders at people. We have Doll, Bluegrass, Urban, and these Vice Admirals, man, Oda's making them look pretty good. You know, Bluegrass shooting a hole through the giant ship, Doll one-shotting Kashi. It's a good day to be a Vice Admiral fan. All I gotta say. I do think it's pretty funny, though, because a couple chapters back, you know, we had Vice Admiral Tosa. He was going in to kill Frankie, and then that is when Brogy essentially one-tapped him. You know, he just hammered him into the ground. And I was like, dang, these Vice Admirals suck. And then here we are, man, with Doll one-tapping Kashi. Of course, Kashi's not Brogy or Dory, but it's still pretty good. It's a named giant taken down, and that's all I can ask for, man. I don't like these giants, so I will say this. Even though I don't like Doll either, seeing Kashi get humbled like this, it feels good. It feels good. Outside of that, though, we do get some giant hype here because all the giants are going crazy. There's like one guy in the water, like eating this marine. You got giants just eating meat and destroying battleships on the side. The giants are crazy. The giants, in my opinion, from what we've seen in this chapter, it looks like they have the upper hand here. Like, the only Vice Admirals that really do anything are just Doll and Bluegrass. And Bluegrass, like I said, is not even attacking a giant. They just blew a hole in the ship. But I gotta admit, I do like Bluegrass's dialogue, because Bluegrass is like, hey guys, Marines, you all are not fodder. You guys matter. You know, you are the main character in your own story, is kind of what she's saying. And I was like, wow, man, you know, if I was on that island, I would be inspired. You know, like, I'd be that one Marine with a really bad pistol, bad aim, no hockey, and I'd be like, wow, Bluegrass, thank you. You know, time to fight a giant. So yeah, it's pretty cool seeing how both sides are fighting here. But of course, I don't think they stand a chance. I mean, Dory, Brogy, Luffy, I mean, Sanji and Atlas are chilling. Bonnie is just standing there. You know, like, a lot of our heavy hitters, a lot of our named heavy hitters are not doing anything. So yeah, the minute they start taking action, I think they're going to get cooked. So rest in peace, Vice Admirals. I think this is just going to be the one and only chapter we'll get where we look pretty decent. The only Vice Admiral that we're really missing right now in action is Doberman. We have not seen Doberman ever since the start of Egghead. I mean, we had a panel where Saturn was like, hey, Doberman, make sure that the researchers who left Egghead are dead. And then Doberman was like, yes, sir. And then we never saw him since. I mean, Doberman, he's ghosting us, dude. Did Doberman kill a boat of innocent civilians? I don't know. Did somebody stop him? I have no clue. Like, there's a lot of things that could have happened with Doberman. Maybe he was even the ship that we saw that was destroyed a lot earlier on Egghead. But we don't know. You know, like, Doberman is like the veteran of the group. He is the one Vice Admiral out of the 9 currently present here on Egghead that we have known for the longest. And he hasn't really shown out yet, you know? So I'm curious to see how Oda's going to play with them. But outside of that, though, we come over to Luffy, and Luffy turns around and he notices that Warkity is no longer chasing them. And they're like, hey, this is a perfect chance to get away. And that is when we cut over to see where Warkity has gone. And we don't only see Warkity in the panel, because we see Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars right there with him. And they are confronting the ancient robot from 200 years ago, or, well, 200 and 900 years ago. And the robot doesn't even know they're there. This robot is looking in the opposite direction. He's like this, and then all the Gorosei are just staring at him like that. It's so funny, dude. It's so funny. And I don't think once, I'm looking right now real quick. Yeah, the robot doesn't once turn over to acknowledge them. Even when Warkity hits him, it looks like he hits him from the side. And even the panel where the robot's walking through the fire, he's still just going straight. So it's like, yeah, where is this guy going? Is he still like hardwired to go to the red line and climb in and attack Marie's Raw? We don't know. I mean, the robot's not giving us any dialogue to work with here. He's kind of just going through the motions, and it's interesting to see. So Warkity, to stop the broadcast, knocks the heck out of this robot. And that is when the broadcast seemingly cuts off at the end of the chapter. The robot isn't destroyed. It's not in 1,000 pieces, but it is flat on its back. And we do see like some, I don't know if it's the ground, but it looks like some pieces are flying off of the attack that Wakari performs on him. So maybe he's damaged a little bit. We're not exactly sure. But yes, the broadcast has stopped at the end. But I'm not too sure how I feel about this. So if the broadcast ends here, I don't mind. You know, like, let's be real. Oda was not going to give us the reveal of the Will of D. He already gave us the world sinking in the underwater cities. There's no way he would have dropped the Will of D. No way. So if the message ends here, I think that makes a lot of sense. Oda still wants to keep the cards close to his chest. One Piece still has a long way to go. We have Elbaf, Lodestar, Laugh-Tale, Marie Joie, maybe the Moon. Like, there's a lot of places we still have to go. If we reveal all the secrets now, that would be kind of crazy. I mean, maybe it wouldn't, but who knows? But I do think there is a chance that the message isn't over. Maybe Vegapunk has a backup plan. Because Vegapunk was very sure when the broadcast started that nobody would be able to stop it. So maybe he foresaw that the robot would go down and he has a secondary Denden Mushi. I think that is very plausible. And while I didn't believe that yesterday, I believe it a little bit today, because at the end of the chapter, you have all of the Gorosei breathing a sigh of relief. They're like, oh, whew. I think on Saturn, on Saturn, you can actually see like a little cloud just on his beard because he's so relieved that it's over. And then York is also on the ground on her knees like, oh, the message is done. You know, like, oh, I finally did it. And it's like, okay, but is it over? Like, maybe it's just me because I've watched a lot of horror movies, and every horror movie does this thing where they're like, oh, we defeated the demon, you know, the boogeyman's gone. And then the credits roll, and then after the credits, the boogeyman is still there. It's like, okay, you know, like maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe this is a fake out because we all think that Oda is going to blue ball us yet again. But next week, maybe Oda brings it back up. I don't know. I feel like it's pretty 50-50 right now, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say. But outside of that, you know, rewinding it a little bit back to Vegapunk's message, he talks about the Will of D, and since the message is cut off, we are left with the hiragana. Sorry, I'm so bad at Japanese. We are left with what seems to be the word mo. And of course, it's cut off from a bigger word or perhaps sentence or phrase, and this is hard. I don't know how to infer this. We could guess what it could mean. I've seen people saying moon. I've seen people say more blank, you know, like, but we have no clue. I feel like this is a mystery that the Japanese will be able to figure out, and we as English readers and speakers might not be able to. And if that ends up being the case, this wouldn't be the first time Oda has done it too. Because back at the Reverie, while Cobra was reading Queen Lily's letter, the Gorosei were screaming. They were like, "Rah!" For no reason whatsoever, you know? They're just screaming to scream. And we, as English speakers, didn't get to see what Cobra's message actually was. But in Japanese, you could pick up small letters here or there, and somebody did it. I saw this too, and I'm sure you could find it online, but you could actually piece together what the letter says. And it talks about the sinking world. And then we come to Egghead Island and we find out that the world is sinking. So this could just be something that we won't have too much context on, but I am curious. You know, I want to see the theories that come out of the Japanese community. I think those will be king this week. And yeah, if you guys have any good suggestions as to what it could be, let me know. And a prime example, you know, shout outs to The Will of Marco over on Twitter. He does a lot of translations for these chapters before TCB and all the other sites do it, and I think he does amazing translations as well. But he talks about how translating Vegapunk's message and the Mo isn't that easy, bringing it into English. And, you know, it's one of those reasons why I don't want to touch on this topic too much, because I feel like I'm just going to miss a lot of nuance, and I'm just going to, you know, I already do headcanon here, but I feel like that would be even crazier. So yeah, we'll leave that to the experts who know Japanese. But outside of that, while Vegapunk is giving the D message, we get some pretty key characters shown. We have Dragon, Sabo, Kobe, Blackbeard, and Beppo. The first character I want to talk about is Beppo, because it looks like he is no longer underwater. it looks like Beppo has found land and possibly treatment for his captain. Actually, Beppo has a band-aid on his cheek, so he is at a new island. And I'm excited to see where he's gone. Personally, I think he has gone to Elbaf, because if you look at the map back in Wano, Elbaf is the closest island to Winter's Island. Unless Beppo, like, went the opposite direction, which wouldn't make any sense since the log post points to Elbaf, I think he's going to Elbaf. It's kind of like the Straw Hats, right? The Straw Hats have to leave Egghead, but since the log post only points to 3 islands, the closest one is Elbaf. So I do think that's where Beppo is currently. I think we're going to meet up with him, Kid, Law pretty soon. And yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think about Beppo. But outside of that, though, the next addition that I thought was fascinating was Kobe. Because Kobe is the one character out of this lineup whose full name we do not know of yet. You know, Beppo, we have his, you know, Mink thing, Dragon, Monkey D. Dragon, Sabo, I forgot his last name, but we know his family. Blackbeard is Marshall D. Teach. But Kobe is just Kobe. You know, like, I'm wondering if Oda is going to do one of those things, kind of like what he did with Law, where, you know, hundreds of chapters later, he's like, oh, by the way, Law is Trafalgar D. Water Law. You know, maybe Kobe's going to be the same thing. Maybe Kobe will have a D in his name. Maybe his name's not even Kobe. Maybe it's Cody. That would be pretty good, actually. Cody, yeah. That could work. That could work. I don't know. You know, what I'm saying is that I think Kobe is a very fascinating character to bring in here. But yes, of course, he does have the connections with Luffy and Garp, so that's another reason. But, you know, I always like to throw a little twist in there. But outside of that, though, another character I want to talk about is Dragon. Because unlike the previous chapters where we have seen Dragon panels, this time around, instead of giving us the ... Dragon gives us the ... exclamation point. The character development, guys, it's here. It's the year of Dragon. But yeah, with that being said, that is all I have today for you guys. Thank you so much for stopping by this video and checking it out with me. Oh yeah, wait, one last thing I want to talk about with the robot, though, is that the robot might actually be down for good. You know, obviously he's not destroyed, but we have to remember that he initially woke up because of Luffy's drum heartbeat. He woke up because of Sun God Nika. Now that Luffy is in base form in this chapter, I think there is a chance that the robot is done for, but maybe he's not. I don't know. It's kind of like a car battery, you know, maybe Luffy just jump-started him and now the robot's good to go, or maybe because Luffy's gear 5th is run out, the robot's run out as well. I feel like there's a couple ways it could go, but again, I would like to pass the question on to you guys. What do you think about this chapter? What do you think the outcome of all of this will be? What is your interpretation on Vegapug's message? And everything else. I would love to hear it all down below. And I'll catch you guys next time. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace.